Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the February 25 meeting of the Chatham Finance Committee. Pursuant to Governor Healy's March 29, 23, signing of the Acts of 23 extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency, suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law until March 31, 2025, which is fast approaching. This meeting of the Chatham Finance Committee is being conducted in person and via remote participation. Every effort will be made to ensure the public can adequately access the proceedings as provided for in the order. A reminder that persons who would like to listen to this meeting while in progress may do so by calling 508-945-4410. Again, 508-945-4410 and enter conference ID 504-285-8 #, 504-285-8 #, or one may join the meeting online via Microsoft Teams through the link in the posted agenda. While this is a live broadcast and simulcast on Chatham TV, despite our best efforts, we may not be able to provide real-time access. We will, however, post a record of this meeting on the town's website as soon as possible. Let's do a roll call. See if we can welcome Tommy Doan back to the house. Tommy Doan?
Here.
Super. Barb Madison?
Here.
John Papalardo?
Here.
Joanne Sprague?
Here.
Andy Young?
Here.
Kristen Andrus and Tracy Shields are not currently present. Eric Whiteley?
Here.
The chair is present. All right, we are going to continue our work with a series of articles for town meeting. And I will therefore turn it over to Carrie to walk us through said articles, starting with revolving funds.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So we have revolving funds article, elected officials article, wood waste article, and a PEG access funds article. And there's a couple of votes that we're going to be going over that need to be done today. Or, well, that should be done, at least. So most of these are annual town meeting articles, so you're familiar with them. The revolving funds is an article to set the limits for the airport revolving fund, Bassett House revolving fund, inspectional services revolving fund, recycling revolving fund, Marconi Station revolving fund, and the waterways user revolving fund.
Carrie, could you just take a minute before we tuck into the details of this, just to remind our listening audience what a revolving fund is, please?
So, yeah, so a revolving fund is a fund where the money doesn't like disappear and go away. So we collect fees for programs, or in other cases, there might be like rental leases that we collect money for, and they go into a revolving fund. We spend them on a particular item, expenditure. In the case of the airport, we collect leases or payments for the airport, and then they go ahead and pay for their expenditures that they have for the airport out of their revolving fund. The funds stay in the revolving fund. We set a limit each year, so the airport has $150,000 that they can expend, no more than that. And the whole point of the article is to set the spending limit for each, so it doesn't go over. It can go over, however, it has to be approved by the select board and I believe the town manager.
Okay, terrific. So can you just detail the funds and the stipulated spending limits?
Yes, so the airport revolving fund, the proposed limit is $150,000 for FY 2026. Then we have the Bassett House revolving fund at $8,000. Inspectional services revolving fund at $150,000. Recycling revolving fund for $5,000. Marconi Station revolving fund for $10,000. And the waterways user fee revolving fund at $1 million, which is unchanged from FY 2025.
Okay, thank you, Carrie.
You're welcome.
Barbara, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Carrie, it seems so small, but what is the recycling revolving fund for, and how do you get money into that?
You know, it is very small, and there hasn't been any receipts or expenditures the past couple years, so I would have to look into it for you and get back to you on that.
Oh, well, you're busy.
Well, I can definitely look into it for you, but there hasn't been much activity in this account for a couple of years, it looks like, so.
And the inspectional services revolving fund, what inspections are those? Obviously not the brand-new one that we're going to be doing for the short-term rentals.
No. So the inspectional services revolving fund, last year, we actually increased the limit. We used to put only 10% of the money in there, and now it's 30%, just for, we pay part-time staff out of there for the inspections. And so, let me see. It's for the issuance of all inspectional permits shall be credited to this fund, so 30%. The Community Development Department, with the approval of the town manager, shall authorize to expend from this fund without further appropriation to defray the expenses associated with the approval of inspectional permits, including paying any wages or salaries for full-time and costs of fringe benefits associated with the wages and said pay. So basically, it's just the permits that we collect. So 30% that we charge goes into this fund to pay the inspectional services.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, Tommy, please.
Thank you. Carrie, the Bassett House revolving fund, that's the house up by 137?
Yes, that's correct.
Is that, does the Chatham, the Chamber of Commerce use that building?
Yes,
Do they pay anything?
yes, $3,000 a year.
$3,000 a year? Mm-hmm. Thank you.
You're welcome. And I have a definition of the recycling revolving fund, too. Let's see. All monies received by the Department of Public Works from the sale of recycling bins, compost bins, rain barrels, kitchen scrap buckets, water-saving devices, blah, 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 shall be credited to this fund. But I haven't seen anything come in, so I have to look into it.
So, I see our town manager's on our call perhaps, but with 0 receipts, Carrie, and 0 expenditures for each of FY '24 and '25, and with an impressive balance of $785.02 in said revolving fund, would it make any sense to eliminate said revolving fund and simplify, streamline, whatever?
Yeah, we could probably look into that. Honestly, I'm not really, it's one of those things that probably is not getting used much anymore.
Yeah,
So
it seems
what's
like the
point
tail
of
of a
it? Yeah,
dead dog.
right, exactly.
So, Andy, please.
Although I know at one point there was activity there, and it was because there were active volunteers who made a point of trying to sell things like rain barrels and so forth. I don't know if that'll reawaken or not. I have no idea.
Jill's on.
Somebody from the recycling side of
Understood,
be able
but
to talk about it.
recent activity would suggest that, so, our town manager has joined us. Hello, Jill. Good afternoon,
Hi,
welcome.
thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I would suggest that we keep it on for this year and give us a chance to look through it, what is available for sale to make sure that there's still items for sale as well, if we still want to do that. So I would suggest keeping it, and then next year we can retire it if need be.
Yeah, I wouldn't propose trying to kill it now, but it might be something in the next fiscal year to think about, given activity and the fund. Just a thought. Further questions? Andy, please.
The inspectional services revolving fund, the wording that you read from was kind of general. It suggests that even the short-term rental inspection fee is going to go into that.
I'm not sure, but I'll look into it.
Okay, I mean, if so, then the payments that we anticipated for the personnel and so forth could come right out of that fund too.
Right.
But, I mean, just trying to keep track of,
I thought it was more for like inspectional permits for like electrical and plumbing and those kinds of things, more so than the short-term rentals. But I'll look into it and get back
just,
to
I
you.
mean, the wording was more general, as I recall. So, that's all.
Okay, thanks, Andy. I just take a note would note that Tracy Shields has joined us online. Hi, Tracy. Okay, so is there a motion to support the various revolving funds? Airport, $150,000, pass it out, $8,000, inspectional services, $150,000, recycling, $5,000, Marconi, $10,000, waterways user fee, $1 million.
So moved.
Quick
Any question? Yep.
Did the Board of Selectmen recommend this?
Thank you, Andy. So the ones that I'm going to be going over today, that Select Board hasn't approved yet.
Has not?
No.
So are we allowed?
So I guess I can put these on for a different day to vote. I just was going over them because I had nothing else to really put on the agenda.
But can we not vote on them? Question for the town manager, perhaps? I know
Jill?
what they like to do, but for things like that, I mean, is there a rule that says we can't vote before the select board?
Let's see.
Yeah, what the heck, Barbara? I don't think your microphone was on. Jill?
Yeah, I don't think there's any risk that the select board will not place them on the warrant, but if you want to postpone voting until you're doing your vote before the closing of the warrant, that's fine too. But these aren't any new revolving funds or existing funds.
We can
Yeah,
vote.
so I
Dealer's
guess
choice.
it's not a formal warrant article yet because it's not been placed on the warrant by the board. So let's refrain from voting then. Okay, Carrie,
Okay.
next.
So
you, Jill.
next, thank you, Jill.
Thank you.
This will probably be a quick meeting because we don't have too much. The airport was already part of that, which was the 150,000. So the next one is PEG access funds. So this is a little bit different than what you're used to seeing. So the PEG access is for public, government, and education. And we get a percentage from Comcast. And each quarter, we get 5% of the sales that Comcast receives. So it's not a ton of money, but, it's a little bit of money. So each quarter, we get that, and each quarter, it's put into each individual fund, public, government, education. As you are aware, we use the government funds for here, and just for this whole station to run this.
Chatham TV.
Chatham TV, yes, thank you, Chatham TV. And then we use the educational funds for the school department if they request any funds. Last year, we used them for their, what were they building? They were building that stage over at the,
Yeah, they had a new sound studio
Yeah.
and,
right, for the football field, I think it was. We'll
Yep.
call it the football field. But anyways, regardless, the public part is currently sitting in a fund for the public, and it's mainly for, hold on one second, I have it written down. Cape Media. Cape Media is part of our group that does public access for the town of Chatham. And they do, like interviews, they'll do like recordings for people and stuff like that, and they'll put it on their channel. So we've been collecting this money, but we haven't had a contract with them. And we're currently working on a contract. I have it sent out to our town council to review and go over. The amount that we received in FY 2024 was $78,600. So that's going to be going to Cape Media. And then every year, this is going to be an annual article on there for them to receive their funds.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay, just to be clear, the article, the proposed article. Oops, sorry, I thought I hit the button. Thank you, Carrie. Just to be clear, the proposed article does cite the $78,600 figure. But did you say that all of that goes to Cape Media?
Yes, that's the public amount that we received in FY 2024. Has nothing to do with the government amount or the education amount. It's completely separate.
Okay, so hence your reference to a new approach, which is segregating this public money
Yep,
from the others.
yes.
Okay. Further questions? Tracy, please.
Oh, Tracy.
Where had these funds gone, like last year, for example?
They didn't go anywhere.
Okay.
What does that mean?
So, but the 78,000 is just from this year's intake? It's not an accumulation of what's been gathered and hasn't been put out yet because the contract wasn't done?
Correct. It's money that we received in FY 2024 and that we're going to be sending to them. And we're going to be doing this. The amount will change annually because depends on the users from Comcast and the amount that we get from them, but.
Okay, thank you. Tracy, does your dog have any questions?
Did the select board vote on this?
No, this one hasn't been voted on either, sorry.
All right,
I
so-
have ones that have been voted, I'll tell you which ones.
All right, okay.
We're just in discussion mode right now.
Okay. All right, so we'll table this for now. Let us know when we enter voting mode.
Okay.
You go smoothly.
So this is another annual one, which is the fixed salaries for elected officials. We have the moderator, select board, and each year, so according to Mass General Law, Chapter 41, Section 108, salaries and compensation of elected officers must be fixed annually by the vote of the town and at annual town meeting. This is basically just approving their salaries. It's going to be in the operating budget, though, so they're already placed in there. They're just approving what they're going to be getting paid.
Questions for Carrie regarding fixing salaries? The notable exception of the Finance Committee.
That's an easy one, too.
All right, thank you, Carrie. Next.
Next is the Wood Waste Enterprise Fund. So this is another annual one. We raise and appropriate $25,000. And we have to get approved for our enterprise fund, according to Chapter 44, Section 53F and a half. We raise and appropriate $25,000, but then in the lease, we actually receive $25,000. So it's basically kind of a wash. Andy had asked me what the balance is in there, the fund balance. The fund balance in the enterprise fund is $414,000.
And can you explain, Carrie, please, for the listening audience, the purpose of the wood waste revolving fund, reclamation facility revolving fund?
It's the enterprise fund,
I'm sorry.
so it's a little bit different. It has its own balance sheet and everything, so it kind of follows the same as the general fund. So the wood waste right now gets leased out by, I think it was previously TW Nickerson.
Yep.
But I think
Yes.
it was transferred to a new owner in 2021, but still the lease doesn't expire until 2029. We have,
So this is
what
for
is
what, monitoring
yes, monitoring the
stump dump and ultimate
and-
remediation or reclamation of the site when the lease expires in
Yes.
29?
Right, and who, it's, I have it here. Weston and Sampson. Weston and Sampson, we have a contract with them until 2029, and they actually do the monitoring of the stump dump, and they take all the samples and everything to make sure everything's running okay over there. And Greg Berman, Director of Natural Resources, he actually receives the information after it was already done, so,
Yeah. So testing, monitoring,
testing, yeah,
and ultimate remediation of the stump dump.
yeah.
Carrie, there's a form of a contract in our,
Yeah, I put that in there. That's from Weston and Sampson.
Yep.
Just in case people had questions, I wanted you to have it so you
Terrific.
could look at it.
and this is the one, to be clear, this is the one that's been executed?
Yes, that's been executed. Yep.
Great. I'll look forward to reading that. Thank you. All right. Another,
I think
no
Barbara had a
action?
question.
Up.
And
Barbara,
where
please.
is this thing? Is this off of Martha Kendrick Road? This stump dump, is that where it is?
Isn't it off of
Mill Hill.
No,
Mill Hill Road.
TW's?
Up in there.
37, right?
The LTW.
Yeah.
Yep.
Does anybody remember the old egg farm that used to be up in Mill Hill?
Sure.
Cool old place.
My question that I know Carrie can't answer is what the heck are we gonna do with all of our wood waste? A polite term for things like tree branches and trees and stumps when this thing finally has to get closed.
And what are the police gonna do for target practice?
Yeah, that too. But I mean, I'm not sure DEP has actually addressed that question, at least.
Do we have any insights into what happens in 2030?
I have no idea.
Okay. Is there 10, and Jill
What
doesn't look
happens
like
in
Jill's here any longer.
2030?
Eric, please.
I know this, I think this came up last year and in the discussion, and this is good that we have a little more information. So the Weston and Sampson is paid 19,000 or whatever it is here of the lease revenue of the 25,000 coming in, and then there's a building fund of 400 and whatever $1,000. Is the expectation that that fund will pay for everything that'll be required in 2029, or is there some, is that the purpose of the
It can.
400,000?
It's just, right, so the money that we take in kind of just stays in here, it stays in the fund. So if they have exceeding expenditures, they can pay them from here because they have the funds available.
I guess my question is more, so in 2029 or 2030, when this is no longer being used for this and the lease is expired and we're not, the minimal income that's coming in stop coming in, the town is gonna be on the hook to clean up this whole place. Is that the expectation?
I don't know, I guess, but they can definitely use this fund to pay for it, yeah.
A little like OPEB, right? Can we calculate what that future cost is gonna be? Don't know.
Yeah, but my understanding historically from Alex is that that's the intended purpose of these monies, is to remediate the site.
Well,
Pay for the monitoring and the testing, but also ultimately to remediate.
will it actually pay for the entire cost? I mean, I think that,
Yeah, well, to Eric's question, who knows?
oh boy.
The unknown unknowns.
Well, we have
Okay.
2 more years left, so.
All right, thank you, Carrie. Wastewater project expansion related borrowing.
Okay, so these are the ones that the select board has already placed on the warrant and approved. So, sorry, this contract, so it's for $32 million. Oh, I think I have CFAL first, the Center for Active Living on my list, if you
Yep,
want to do
that's
that one
fine, thank you.
first. So the Center for Active Living is for the renovations and expansion. It's for $5,000, $5 million of free cash is what we'll be using for this article. The select board has unanimously approved this article as well. Did I put it in there? Do you have that one? Okay. I know you guys saw this last week, so. Do you guys want to discuss it a little bit first, or do you want to?
Why don't you give us a quick flyby for the benefit, not only of the committee, but the public who may be watching?
So the Center for Active Living is for an FY 2026 article for expansions and renovations for, it's Stony Hill Road, right?
Correct. Yep.
And the amount that they have come to, the estimated amount of the project for all renovations is $4.9 million. The article is requesting $5 million. So there'll be an additional $50,000 left over just in case of contingencies or whatever. That's not a lot, but it's still there. This has been an ongoing thing in town, as you all know. There's been a couple of articles that have gone to town meeting. And I think that this is something that is going to be very helpful for the building itself. It's come to its full expansion that so what was explained during the meeting last week with Leah and Terry, she doesn't have enough space for the participants, for the rooms and such and they're hitting their heads on the roof
Right.
because of, well, they try not to have their heads hit on the roof.
So ultimately, though, this is essentially a bit of a compromise after the defeat 3 times of the proposed article.
Yes,
At town
exactly.
meeting for, $8 to $11+ million. This is sort of a compromise approach to
And it will give them the space that they
rehabilitating
need.
the existing facility, expanding it somewhat, not extensively, at roughly half the price of where we last were. Questions, Joanne, please.
And thank you, Mr. Chairman. And when you drive into the transfer station and you see the brand-new building going up there and how quickly it went up, it does make me wonder, at least, why it's taken us so long to come to grips with funding a building that's so important for our seniors, so important for Chatham to show to the rest of the world that we do care for all of our citizens in Chatham, and that we are able to finally have our own daycare for dementia patients and patients who need to come for relief and to give the care tenders at home relief. This has been a long time coming. The price to me is right compared to the millions and millions we are spending on other points of Chatham to make it look good and keep up with the future. So I'm very much in favor of this. I think it's well presented, it's well considered and well done, and certainly worth the money. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Joanne. Other comments? Barbara, please.
I think we could be the last town on Cape Cod finally to do a senior center. I remember in 1987 when the bank opened its, when we opened our branch in Yarmouth, we sold hot dogs there for 5 cents. We donated all of our 5 cents to the Yarmouth Senior Center, who were collecting money to open at that point, 1987.
Well, maybe if you'd
It's
done
about
that-
time.
Maybe if you'd done that in Chatham, we'd have a senior center by now.
Unfortunately, the branch is already here.
I appreciate your comment, Barbara. Thank you. Other comments or questions? Carrie, the only question I have, I'm supportive of this article. I think that that all the stakeholders involved in this process have done a good job in trying to listen to town meeting and the voters over the last several trips to the plate. The only question I have, and I have got it for the transfer station article as well, is we seem to come potentially perilously close to the estimates with these authorizations. The estimate's at, what, 4.95 million, and we're authorizing 5. So if we're off by 5%, 10%, we're
They
out of luck for another year.
They did add some other contingencies in here as well.
I understand we're carrying contingencies, but I guess I just wonder, and it's too late since the select board's already voted on this, and we have an article that's being presented to us, if on a going forward basis, having a little bit more of a buffer than $50,000 on a $5 million project might not be prudent. Because if we miss and it comes back a year from now, it's gonna be more than $5 million.
Right.
So just from a budgeting and finance perspective.
Yes.
Something I think this town might want to think about, and maybe we put that in our report. So, okay, this has been
Okay.
voted on?
Yes, the select board fully supported this.
Okay, so, and just a summary, Carrie, the free cash balance, we've got essentially 11.2 million now.
Yes.
This is gonna be 5 out of that balance, in
Correct.
addition to the 3 million for the transfer station. And what, roughly $2.6 million for capital project requests.
That's correct.
They're gonna be funded from free cash as well, so we're smoking through that fund, will leave us with about $600,000.
Yep.
Okay. Motion to support the $5 million expenditure for the Council on Aging facility.
So moved.
Second,
Thank you. In favor? Tommy?
yes.
Barbara?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Joanne?
Yes.
Andy?
Yes.
Tracy?
Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
Chair's in favor, 8-0. Thank you, Carrie.
Thank you. So the next one that we have, the select board has also unanimously approved this one for $32 million for the capital wastewater project expansion. This is a borrowing. The request is for $32 million. There's a $2 million set aside for the first phase of the grinder pump purchases within here that is not eligible for the Clean Water Trust funds that we receive. So basically $30 million will be, we have already been approved for from Clean Water Trust for this, which is a 0% interest. We typically also receive subsidies and stuff like that, so it reduces our bond when we receive those for these, but we wouldn't know that until next year probably, so.
Okay, comments, questions, Eric, please.
So I know we had the presentation at a previous meeting on this, and it was a lot of detail in that. I don't remember having, I know they mentioned it, but the full discussion on what the grinder pump proposal was. I think that maybe they're waiting to hear from the selectmen on what that was gonna be. So what ultimately was decided on what that means and who's gonna have access to those pumps and all of that?
Any insight on that, Carrie? Or I noticed that Dean Castro, one of our select board
Oh,
members,
he's
has
got
his
his
hand up.
hand up, Dean.
Dean, welcome. You're muted, Dean.
Hi, Mr. Chairman, thank you. I just thought I'd try to respond to Eric's question. The select board has voted a policy on grinder pumps, I think 2 weeks ago. And basically, we made a determination for the initial acquisition and installation only, and not the issue of maintenance, which is being left for future consideration. But the select board agreed that the town would purchase the pumps and install the pumps. And, I'm sorry, the town would purchase the pumps and provide but not install them. The town would not own them. The town would commit ownership to the property owner, who was compelled to install a sewer connection via a grinder pump, whether it's on a low pressure system that the town has determined to put into the street, or whether by virtue of the topography of your property or the distance from the sewer main, you had to have a grinder pump in order to connect to a gravity system. So the town will buy the pumps, but the ownership will devolve to the property owner. The town will not install them. The town, however, will provide a payment initially of $2,000 per property owner to assist with the installation cost. And that would increase over time by, I think, about 3%. There's a chart. I don't have it with me handy, but I mean, I could pull it if you need more information. But there would be an annual incremental cost designed to account for the increases in cost of living. So so the town buys the pump, pays for the purchase of the pump. The property owner installs the pump and gets $2,000 toward that installation cost. And the reason for the $2,000 is that when you install a grinder pump, there's an electrical component to it that is not involved when you don't have to have a grinder pump. And there were varying estimates of what the electrical component cost, and on average, it appeared to be about $2,000, looking at other towns. So that's essentially what it is. And the reason it doesn't qualify for the low interest loans, this expenditure, this $2 million, which is the first 2 years, because there are, I think, 240 property owners that will be subject to grinder pumps in the first 2 years. 120 have already connected, and I think another 120 are expected. The reason it doesn't qualify is that under the state rules, the town would have to continue to own and maintain the pumps. And we've chosen not to do that. I'm sorry for that long-winded explanation, but there was a lot back and forth between the Water and Sewer Advisory Committee and the Select Board, with also input from some affected property owners and the Summer Residence Advisory Committee. I hope that's helpful. I'm happy to answer any further questions.
I think that's helpful, Dean. As you were talking, I was thinking to myself, I should probably recuse myself because I am going to require a grinder pump. So I'm going to take the opportunity to hand the meeting over to our Vice Chair, Andy Young, to further any conversation and a vote in support of this, and I will slip off the dais a little bit.
I don't, I don't know about,
Joanne, please.
I don't know about anyone else, but this is a little confusing to me. We're voting for the continuance of our sewer program, which we're used to voting for and understand it. But what I'm understanding from Dean's conversation, that within the 32 million will be the money for grinder pumps,
Yes,
but part.
It's about
but-
2 million.
But that part of the 32 million is not going to be authorized at a lower interest rate like the rest of the 32 million because of certain circumstances. And I'm wondering, I think this is good for the town because of the sewer will profit everyone in town. But I'm wondering about the people who've already paid for the grinder pumps.
oh, I should
Wait,
explain.
let me finish. I've got more
Go
than
ahead,
that.
yeah.
Who've already paid for the
ahead.
grinder pumps. And the citizens who are paying for the sewer, but will never, and also be paying their share of this $32 million, but also be paying for the share of the people who are getting the grinder pumps free. That seems like a lot of questions to ask that have been rolled all into a $32 million request. And I just want to make sure all of those questions have been addressed from my point of view.
Dean, do you care to pick up some of that?
Sure, yeah, I'll just try to answer what Joanne was addressing. Those who have already paid and installed their grinder pumps, they will also retroactively be compensated for the payment of their grinder pumps in that same amount of money, $2,000, and as well the cost of the pump that they purchased. That is the details of that have not been fully sorted out. I don't know whether the sewer division is going to look for receipts, payment documentation. I'm not sure how that's going to work, but the intention of the select board in the policy that we adopted was that those who have already paid for the grinder pump and paid for the installation would get the same benefit as those going forward. Your second question is a broader question. It goes back to the whole issue of how to fund the sewer project back in, which was discussed back in 2009, 2010. Admittedly, this grinder pump issue, which was discussed, and there's some representation in the documentation of those discussions back then that the town would pay for the acquisition and the installation of the grinder pumps, which is an argument that was made by the Summer Residence Committee and some property owners. But the level of detail was never really sorted out, and no policy was ever really put in place until just recently. But the understanding was that the entire sewer project benefits the whole town because of the removal of nitrogen and the improvement in the environment. And therefore, although this is an additional charge that has only recently risen to the point of resolution, it's part of the overall sewer project. So I know that's, people can argue it either way, and the addition of grinder pumps as part of the expenditure is new because it's the first time it's been put forward. I don't know if I don't really have anything further to say in response to Joanne's.
Just let me follow up
Comment.
with one more question.
Yeah.
And how do you, how do you handle the part that's not receiving the 2% interest or the lower interest from the grinder part? How do we separate that in the loan?
I think I would leave that to Carrie to answer. It's more of a financial question. Carrie, can you?
Yep, I can. So when we present the article at town meeting and then it gets approved and it goes on the ballot, because it has to go on a ballot and get approved, we then send it to our financial advisors. They put it on a list. And then when we also will get approved for the Clean Water Trust monies,
Right.
they'll give us $30 million. So that will automatically come off. So the $2 million, I'll have to go out and get a general bond obligation for.
Oh, okay.
So it will be listed separately. Well, it'll be listed all together, but I will see it separately on the spreadsheet that I get from the financial advisors.
Okay, thank you. That answers that. And just one more quick comment, Mr. Chair, that I don't think this committee has had a chance to discuss the final problem of the whole sphere of taxpayers. And I agree with what Dean said about originally we agreed that the whole town would profit from having the sewer problem. And even though it's a high price to pay, we decided that everyone would be involved with supporting it. But this is a new addition to that. And I just don't think we've had the chance to discuss that. And do we still feel the same about those who don't have to have the grinder pump still supporting the whole sewer installation, including grinder pumps for the people who need them? Thank you.
Okay, Barbara,
Andy,
you're
can
up,
I
and then
just start?
Tracy.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Do we have an idea today of how much these grinder pumps cost and how many people we think in the town are going to have them?
If I could answer, Andy?
Please, go ahead.
Yeah, Barbara, the retail cost of these pumps is in the order of $10,000 a piece. That's not installations, that's just the equipment. And the town will negotiate and should be able to get a commitment for purchasing them at about $7,000 currently. I mean, the prices will go up over time, obviously. And we will also attempt, I think it's in the policy that we adopted, to attempt to get a 5-year warranty on these as well. But it's about $7,000. I'm carrying water here for the water and sewer department, but I'm going best on memory. I'm liaison to the water and sewer committee, and Ann Ryan is a member of that committee. And I just wanted to say, I know you have others that want to speak. I know Tracy wants to speak. That there is a phase 2 to the sewer project, which includes those areas that perhaps may never be sewered, may never have to be sewered, but it's still part of the original plan. And I want to say I have followed this grinder pump issue for about 2 years with the Water and Sewer Committee, and that committee was very reluctant, I think, to have the town underwrite the full cost of purchase and installation, and ultimately a compromise proposal was reached, and the committee supported it. But there are arguments on both sides, so I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Dean. Barbara, do you have any
Yeah,
follow-up?
so do we have any idea how many parcels of property are going to require these grinder pumps?
Yeah, I think, well, immediately it'll be, I think it's about 1,000. I think ultimately it's 1,000.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's somewhere around that.
And that includes not just, as I said, there are 2 types of property that will require a grinder pump. One is where the town puts a low pressure system in, a low pressure main on the street because the elevation of the street is so low. You need so high, you need a grinder pump to move the material up through the pipes. Or if you're on a gravity street, your property happens to be lower than the street, or is pretty far away from the street, so you might need a grinder pump. So most of those 1,000 people, I think 600 or so, are people that are going to have a grinder pump. Some of them already have, because the town chose to put a low-pressure system in. But it's about 1,000 total.
Thanks. Thank you, Dean.
All right, Tracy, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A couple of questions. That math seems off to, I mean, so how do we think that 2 million is going to cover 1,000 of these if they cost 7,000? Is one question, because initially, before you said the 1,000, I was going to say, do we really have a degree of confidence that this will actually cover it all, or are we going to have to come back in and get more? And then I guess my other question is more generally, is the idea for the town to pay for these and the additional and the 2,000 for the specialized installation to try and make it a level playing field with folks that don't happen to live on a parcel, so that everyone's, paying to get hooked up, but it's not an exorbitant amount for properties that would need a grinder pump, such that we wouldn't want them to not connect because of that additional cost?
Well, I'm trying to remember your first question. I was looking for some material when you asked it. Could you
Sure. Just
restate
sort of,
that?
how did we come up with the $2 million amount? Is that really going to
Okay.
cover enough to buy all those pumps?
The 2 million is for the first 2 years. This is like a 30-year. I was looking for the long. Do you happen to have those, Carrie? That material. There's a chart that was put together by the sewer department, and it extends out about 30 years. And the first 2 years will cost about 2 million, because that reflects to about 240 properties. So it's not all 1,000 of them in the first 2 years. And then there's a much lesser number in each of the subsequent, I'll say 28 years, it could be off, with an incremental increase to allow for inflation or the cost of living on the $7,000 amount or the $2,000 amount. And your second question, if you could, Tracy.
Sort of more generally, is the intent here to sort of create some parity in that
Yeah.
folks that don't live on a parcel that needs a grinder pump still have to pay for the installation, and so it sort of equalizes the town paying for the pump, and the 2,000 for the specialized installation should shake out to what other folks are paying for just a basic installation.
That's what drove it. It wasn't so much parity. I think you're the first one to use that word. We've been using the word equity, and I say equity is not equality, because you can have differing hookup costs even among gravity connecting people. In my own case, I spent in 2006 about $16,000 to connect to a gravity, to make gravity connection. That involves a lot, replumbing the house, redirecting the plumbing. I had to dig up my neighbor's private paved street, put in a manhole, which is no longer required. But others who live right off the town way, it might have cost $3,000 or $4,000. So there's no way we're ever going to come up with an equalization as between those who have to have a grinder pump and those who do not. We know that everybody is required to connect when the order comes, regardless of how you connect. And so we looked at, and when I say we, the committees, the select board, the staff, what significant cost is there when you have to have a grinder pump that those who don't have a grinder pump incur. And the principal part is the electrical cost, the electrical connection. Now, on the other side of it, if you have a grinder pump, your piping doesn't have to go as deeply into the ground as you do with a gravity system. So there is a larger cost on the gravity side for the excavation piece. But we tried to come up with, the select board tried to come up with some sort of number that would be a proxy for equity, or to use your term, parity. So that was the intent.
Okay.
So
And then just a quick follow-up. So by my math, it's at least going to be about 9 million to get all 1,000 people
Yeah,
hooked up plus their 2,000.
I'm still here. I'm just looking for the grinder pump stuff. This is it.
Sorry, I was looking too to see
I
if I
do share
found
the
it.
sentiment that Joanne sort of expressed as to why this couldn't be separated out and discussed as its own article.
Well, it could be, I suppose. You know, it's not the way it was presented to the select board, and I suppose we could have requested it elsewhere. Forgive the disembodied voice here. I cannot find my grinder pump stuff, but there is a, yeah.
if I may, Dean and Tracy, I mean, my understanding of the comprehensive wastewater management plan is, you know, this is only another step. There are more steps. There are more debt issues that are going to be expected over the next 20 or 30 years to be able to complete the sewage plant. And, you know, it makes a certain amount of sense to not reserve for everybody's grinder pump that's possible over the next 30 years in one issue. Instead, deal with the ones that have been installed, the ones that are contemplated in this next 2-year rollout, and just leave it at that for now, I think. I mean, that's my opinion. Eric, did you have?
Yes.
Sorry, Eric, did you want to say something?
I do have a question, but did Dean have something to add? Or?
Dean, did you have
I
something?
was just, I was just going to say, you can certainly defer a vote on this today and ask Rob Faley to come back and talk with you, answer these questions better than I can. But you're right, Andy. This first 2 million is for the first couple of years, and we'll be coming back for further borrowings over the years. That'll be 5 or 6, 7 years. We come in with looking for a large borrowing request to be approved by town meeting, and I would assume we would include grinder pump costs as part of this plan. The estimate, as I said, of the whole town who are expected to need grinder pumps is about 1,000. It was originally 1,200 as estimated back in 2009 or 10, and it's about 1,000 now, to the best they can determine. Of course, you never really know fully until you get into the different streets and locations. Okay.
Okay, Eric?
Thanks. Might be some detail that you might not know, Dean, but of the 240 that are proposed to be in this first phase of this, how many of those are already installed that they're still trying to figure out what the compensation would be?
I was surprised to hear that it was 120. I had thought it was anywhere between 30 to 60, but in meetings that I've had and in public representation made by Rob Faley, it's 120 that have already connected.
Okay. So there's still going to be a formula that's developed for that. I understood that you said that. And then,
the details.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then, so we're talking about from this $2 million expenditure, whatever that ends up being, presumably half of it, roughly half. And then the other 120 that are in this phase, is the expectation that the town would purchase all of those together to get that discounted rate? And if they do,
Yes.
what are they going to do with them and where are they going to keep them?
Yes, the town would negotiate and purchase this, and it's based on that information is based on research that's been done by the town staff and others. And They would have a plan of where the town would actually physically acquire these in stages. You wouldn't have one big lot with 120 grinder pumps. You might have, I don't know how many, but it would be considerably fewer than that. So you would not get them all in one lump sum. You would try to work it so that you would acquire them on an as-needed basis from the seller.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Eric. John, you have any, no? Okay. Go ahead, Joanne.
I just have one more thing, and nobody ever said this was going to be easy when we first started this years ago. But Carrie, every year I've mentioned a state tax credit for a mandated connection, and I always mention Schedule Z because that's the one I used, I think, back in 2011. It's changed. I looked it up today, and I will bring in a copy next week. I was busy today. It's called Schedule SC, and sewer connection is underneath that. And I will bring in a copy because for the people who are paying for their sewers, I got back over 4 years a very good tax credit for the amount that we spent connecting to the sewer. And the instructions are all that. So I'll bring the instructions and a copy of the schedule.
Okay.
Thursday. I've got it already out. It's on my desk, but I'll bring it in.
Okay, great, thank you.
Good information, Joanne, thank you. That'd be great. Other
I wish
questions on
someone-
this article? No? And so,
Oh, Tracy.
Tracy. Sorry,
Sorry,
Tracy,
and-
please.
One more sort of question or comment. I guess why I am considering the cost in totality is that we're going to be committing to this. So like if we go ahead and reimburse the 120 and purchase the other 120, it wouldn't be fair if in the future we don't provide them to everyone. So by initiating this process, we are committing to paying whatever it ends up costing in later years for all, say, 1,000 properties, right? Because if we're going to do it for some, then it means that we're going to do it for everyone down the road. Just to clarify.
Yes, you're correct. And I can also find the agenda that went to the select board for the grinder pumps, for the policy for you, if that helps as well.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Andy, can I just add in response to Tracy's question? I think effectively we are, Tracy, making that commitment. But the policy, as I said, we've had a sewer program in place for 15 years, but no policy. And some folks, like some residents committees said, oh, well, it was in the original cost, the numbers, that a certain amount of money was going to be allotted for the acquisition and installation of grinder pumps, and that was a commitment by the town. That was done in 2009, and I'm not sure that I myself found that as compelling as some others might have. And so we needed to have a policy in place, and if a future select board decides they want to change that policy, then that policy could be changed. I think it would be a difficult thing for them to do, but certainly principles of equity enter in, and the legality of all these things, would potentially have to be challenged if the town decided not to honor a commitment like that going forward.
Tracy, any follow-up? No?
No, that's good. Thank
Okay.
you.
All right, Joanne.
Well, the important word is mandated, and we haven't suffered from the state mandate, but the state has mandated some of our towns with the people having to build a new septic system. That's expensive too, but it's being mandated by the state. And a mandated sewer connection means whatever you have to do to connect to the sewer. And when we voted to have townwide sewer and then mandate the connections, this is what we're gonna have to deal with. So we're causing our residents to have to pay a certain amount to tie into the sewer system, and we're mandating that they do it. So I guess it is our responsibility to keep dividing it up amongst all the taxpayers, which is not always, yes, it's not always attractive, let's say.
Do we have other questions, comments? I have a general question. Carrie, you did say the select board voted in favor of this article
Yes, they did.
with a 5-0?
Yes, I believe it was, yeah.
It
What was
was
that?
4, because I
Five-
don't think Corey
five
was
to-
there.
Oh, okay.
I think he was there for this one.
Oh,
I think he
somebody
was.
wasn't there,
Oh, maybe Shireen.
maybe.
At least we know they did
was-
vote and that it was in
It
favor.
was a unanimous vote. yeah.
Yes, it was.
Okay, all right, thank you. All right, well, hearing no other questions, I don't see anybody else online. Does anybody care to make a motion that we would vote to support approval of this article?
So moved.
Tommy's made it. Anybody second?
Second.
Second, John and Joanne, you're in a tight race there to be second. All right, all those in favor should say aye.
Aye.
I'm sorry, I forgot. I have to poll everybody. All right. And I should also note that Chairman Daniel has recused himself from this discussion and from the vote. All right, Eric Whiteley,
Yes.
Joanne,
Yes.
Barbara,
Yes.
Tommy,
Yes.
chair votes aye, John,
Yes.
and Tracy?
Yes.
Okay, all right, so it's unanimous. All right. It's good.
Thank you, Andy.
It's a heavy lift, but, yeah.
Interesting discussion. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Carrie, I think that may be it, right?
That's everything
So
for today.
we should, I think, start scheduling votes. Sort of two things on my mind. One is just to start ticking off votes on departmental budgets and other things that have been presented to us. Always like to have some time for consideration and marination. But certainly it'll be in advance of any vote, following a motion and a second. We'll obviously have the opportunity to ask questions again and tuck into some of these things. So maybe you and I put our heads together on what and when. I do know, what do we got for Thursday?
Thursday, let's see.
More articles.
Right, we have more than that, though. For votes on warrant articles?
No, they're gonna be, Thursday, we're
just-
gonna be presenting, Carrie's gonna be presenting more articles for us to consider and prospectively vote on if the select board has done so.
Yes, though they're mostly, I sent you guys the agenda the other day.
Yeah, well, that's okay. We can,
Hold on,
we can
I'll
hit
bring it up.
online.
Yeah,
But why don't you and I think about other votes we can start knocking down?
Yeah, I tried to bring in these were the only ones that the select board had voted on that you guys haven't voted on. It gets hard because their meetings are only once a week, where you guys have your meetings twice a week, so. So it gets a little tough, so we'll probably have like one meeting
We will
with the rest of
patiently wait for
everything
the
to vote
select board.
on.
But Dean, if there's anything you can do to accelerate your voting, we'd be grateful. We'd be-
I think the
we'd be
next
appreciative.
votes are gonna be operating and the 5-year capital.
Yep.
Because they'll
Yeah,
be
that's the
voting
kind
on
of stuff
that
I really
tonight.
want to start tucking into.
Yeah,
Thursday, what you have listed, Carrie, is general bylaw amendment, stormwater management, general bylaw amendment, allowing the finance committee to serve as members of advisory and ad hoc committees. Also, a new home rule petition to allow associate members of the Conservation Commission the power to vote in the case of an absence of a voting member. Oh, the thickly settled 25-mile-an-hour speed limit.
yep. I haven't gotten any documents or any paperwork or anything on this, so as soon as I get it, I'll,
Well, we're also going to have the police chief and the fire chief weigh in on that.
And then we have the
Idea.
open-ended vote on articles.
yep.
We could
So I
any
could,
number
I
of
could
things.
bring the two that they'll vote on tonight
Yeah, that'd be great.
for Thursday.
Most of those, I think, I guess of those four, all of them are citizen petition articles. So, the other thing I want to think about and actually start working on for a variety of reasons is a report for the warrant. Which, involves kind of a lot of just kind of budgetary review. I'm sure everybody remembers I typically use the same form of just apprising the taxpayers of kind of all the financial implications of the proposed articles. And then we have our topics of note conversation. A lot of that is predicated on our initial report to the select board. But as we work to finalize that thing or develop that report for the warrant, obviously I want to hear ideas from the committee and discussion from the committee about other topics of note, quote unquote. That'd be helpful. My intent is pending a couple things, just to try to start working on that in the next few days or week. Andy, please.
You getting a flow of minutes?
Yeah, not a flow, it's more sort of a periodic injection.
Okay.
Ann's been monitoring our meetings from afar. But it was probably been a month or 5 weeks since I last got some minutes, but, as ever, she's doing a super job in what she delivers, so. All right, anything further from anyone? Carrie?
No, I don't have anything else.
Okay, thank you. I'll take a motion to adjourn.
I'll move it. Second.
Thank you. Tracy?
Yes.
That's a little more enthusiastic. John?
Yes.
Andy?
Yes.
Tommy?
Yes.
Barb?
Yes?
Joanne?
Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
Chair says yes. Thank you guys very much. Appreciate it. Thank you, Carrie.
Thank you.
What are you guys gonna do with your free time?